Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. All right. Welcome, everybody. We are glad you're here. This is the first session of our Winter Bite series, Envisioning the Future series. And this is transition from early intervention to kindergarten. If you are attending the other sessions, we have student-led IEPs coming up on March 7th, and transition, it's not just a form, that one's targeted from high school to adulthood on March 21st. So you guys are welcome to join us for those ones too. This is transition from early intervention to kindergarten strategies for families. A couple of, are you guys seeing that? There we go. A couple of reminders. Please keep yourselves muted unless you want to speak. Use the chat to make comments or questions. You can use that at any time. But we're going to have a discussion period at the end, so you can ask questions then. But please, please, please try to refrain from personal details in the chat, just for privacy. And let us know if you need anything, if you have any accessibility needs. To introduce myself, my name's Jackie. I do community outreach for the Peel Center. And I have 3 kiddos who have been through this process. So I'm happy to be here and talking about it with you guys. My colleague Diane Perry is here. She's our family resource specialist for the Philadelphia area. And I also have my colleague Natalie here, who is our training coordinator for Peel, and she'll be sharing later in the presentation. And last but not least, Anya Fredrickson, our director of training, is also here, but she's just kind of checking things out. The Peel Center, if this is your first time with us, we're the Parent Training and Information Center for the state of Pennsylvania. Every state has to have a Parent and Training and Information Center according to the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. For Pennsylvania, that's us. And our mission statement is the mission of the Peel Center is to educate and empower families to ensure that children, youth, and young adults with disabilities and special healthcare needs lead rich, active lives as full members of their schools and communities. So, we hope the goal is by the end of this session, you guys will be able to identify differences between eligibility for special education in early intervention and in school age programs. Understand the options for developing an IEP as a child transitions from early intervention to school age, and describe the importance of informed decision-making in determining educational placement while maximizing, holy moly, your child's participation and inclusion with typically developing peers. All right. We have a poll. You guys can type in the chat, or I'm going to try to launch this poll. And we want to know, how much do you feel you already know about the new school that your child will be attending? And what aspects of your child's new classroom are you most concerned about? You can put your answers in the chat or take the poll or just hang back, whatever.
I don't think the poll was launched. I don't see
anything.
anything.
I did launch it, but maybe you can't see it.
Oh, okay.
That's okay. That's okay. Just put it in the chat then.
We're getting some answers, it looks like.
Where were the answers?
In the poll.
Oh,
3 people say that they know very little
Okay.
about their child's new school. 60% of people say they somewhat know. No one says that they know a lot.
Okay.
Everyone says that they are concerned about the IEP, making sure supports are in
Mm.
place, and making sure my child has friends. So yeah, lots of people in the same boat.
All right. Well, hopefully we can help with that some here. So starting with the basics, we're going to talk about the differences between the two systems, preparing for transition, and ensuring inclusion. Preschool EI eligibility. I mean, EI is early intervention. You kiddos have to have a developmental delay or specific diagnosis as described by PA regulations and need specifically designed, I'm sorry, I said specifically, specially designed instruction. These are the categories of disability as defined by IDEA. Autism, deafblindness, deafness, emotional disturbance, hearing impairment, intellectual disability, multiple disabilities, orthopedic impairment, other health impairment, specific learning disability, speech or language impairment, traumatic brain injury, or visual impairment, including blindness. For school age eligibility, it's two-pronged, and they have to qualify under one of those IDEA categories from the last slide and need specially designed instruction. And I believe it's a 25% delay or 1.5 standard deviations from the norm for their chronological age as a qualification factor.
That is
All right.
correct, Jackie. And I also just put in the chat a link to the eligibility announcement from OCDEL, Office of Child Development and Early Learning, about for the preschool. So yes, I put that in the chat as well.
Thanks, Diane.
Sure.
And so then moving on, talking a little bit about evaluations. For preschool early intervention, the initial evaluation needs to be completed within 60 calendar days of the date parent permission is received, and students are reevaluated every 2 years. But when you get into the school age special education system, the initial evaluation is still completed within 60 days of the date parent permission is received, and reevaluations must be completed every 3 years unless the student has an intellectual disability, then it's every 2 years. Here are some differences in the different systems. For preschool early intervention, the IEP is done annually, same as school age. But for this, based on the school calendar, preschool IEPs are designed with 12 months programming, and you can't have breaks longer than 3 weeks. And for early intervention, they can enter services on their 3rd birthday. But when they get to school age, it's based on the 180 calendar days that kids have to attend school, and they can be considered for extended school year. And entry age, when you get to school age, is actually decided by the district. Compulsory age in the state of Pennsylvania is 6 years old, so kids have to be in school at 6, but districts can vary on dates that kids have to be the right age to enter kindergarten.
Yeah, and Jackie, I just wanted to add a little bit on that
Sure.
slide in regards to the IEPs being done annually. It is also good to know that you can call an IEP meeting at any time, but they are required to meet at least once annually on for the IEP to go over all pieces of the IEP. So just wanted to throw that out there. Yep.
And any member of the IEP team can request a meeting, right, Diane?
Correct. Oh, yeah.
Yep. So, and then preparing for transition to school, the early intervention entity must send you a notice a year in advance about the need to transition to your district program or your charter school, and schedule a transition meeting by the end of February to select school placement. So it's almost the end of February, actually. Next Thursday is the 29th. So I guess the question is, if you're at this stage, have you received your notice of transition meeting yet? There are a couple options when it comes time to transitioning your kiddo. So the first option is that the child remains eligible for school age special education services. And they're eligible for those services if they were in preschool early intervention registered with their school district or a charter school. And unless a reevaluation is completed and determines the child is no longer eligible for special education by the district, the charter school, or the preschool early intervention program. Provided everything remains eligible, they can choose to, the IEP team, not they, the IEP team as a whole can choose adopt a preschool or adopt the preschool IEP and evaluation report, adopt it but with some revisions, or conduct a whole new reevaluation. If you're adopting the IEP from early intervention and the evaluation report, the IEP team, which is the parents and the school district, can decide to adopt the evaluation report or the IEP and implement it as the child's school age IEP. So it would just be basically like taking the IEP that they had in preschool, and now it's going to be their school age IEP. Once the team decision is made, the school district issues a notice of recommended educational placement, which you'll hear called a NORUP all the time. And the NORUP's a form that provides families with the ability to agree or disagree with whatever is being recommended as far as placement by the district. And it's a form, it comes in writing. You have to read through it, agree, disagree, sign it.
Jackie, I just wanted to add that I did put links in the chat
Great.
for the annotated form of the NOREP, that Notice of Recommended Educational Placement, also called Prior Written Notice. And then I also put another link in there for Peel has a
Fact sheet.
An action, yeah, thank you, a fact sheet specific to the NOREP, and it takes you through all of your options on that form of the NOREP, because there's a lot of things to consider about agreeing or disagreeing, and if you want to have an informal meeting. So there's a lot of options on that NOREP, that Notice of Recommended Educational Placement. So I just want to make sure that everybody has those that I did put in the chat.
And we can bring them up at the end and look at them if people want to do that. And we can always, PL can always, if you need some help, we can always help you try to navigate that too. So our second option with transitioning to school age is adopting the IEP, but with revisions. So it wouldn't be exactly the same as preschool. The IEP team, which again is parents and school district members, can decide to adopt the early intervention preschool IEP with revisions. And how this works is that the IEP team discusses the proposed revisions to the IEP, and the school district then still issues a NORUP for the family to agree or disagree with the placement recommendation.
And it would actually even say on the NOREP, there's a box on there like what action is happening. So the action would have to be very specific to what the changes or revisions or whatever are going to be. So that NOREP is a really important form to make sure that it's worded correctly as far as whatever you will be agreeing to or not agreeing to.
Yep. And then the third option that can happen is a full reevaluation. The IEP team can determine that a reevaluation is necessary, and the school district notifies the parent in writing that the reevaluation will be conducted. This notification must occur within a reasonable amount of time after the parent completes the intent to register form. I think we consider a reasonable amount of time 30 calendar days. And then the reevaluation begins with a review of existing data, but the parent can also request a reevaluation before kindergarten. Then the reevaluation report comes and it's issued to summarize the data reviewed during the reevaluation, to provide information about any additional data that might be needed, and to obviously determine continued eligibility for special education. If the child is eligible for school aid special education services, the school district will then convene an IEP meeting, again within 30 calendar days of the report, assure a smooth transition to school age programs, and a new IEP will be developed and NOREP issued. So again, you'll get a NOREP here to agree or disagree with.
And I just wanted to also add that on one of the previous slide, as far as when the parent makes a request, could make a request for a reevaluation before kindergarten. Anytime a parent makes any kind of request, we always do suggest that you do that in writing so that you do have a paper trail and that you can remember when you requested it and so forth, because the district will have to respond to you when you do make those types of requests. And they do need to respond to you in a reasonable amount of time. So if you're requesting a reevaluation, you want to be able to make sure that reasonable time for them to respond should be like a week to 10 days. If you're not hearing anything, then you just want to do some follow-up and say, hey, I requested this. Is this yes or no? Or, that kind of thing. So it's really important to, as you're moving forward in any of these processes that you're going through when you're transitioning, is to put any of those requests in writing.
Yeah, at Peel we tell people always in writing. And so then some things you can do in advance, some transition strategies to prepare for the transition, is to basically collab with the early intervention provider and the preschool staff to create a transition plan. You can schedule visiting days so you and your child can become familiarized with the school and to identify needs for support. And you can create a portfolio about your child to share with your child's teachers. And now we actually have my colleague Natalie is going to share about what they did to prepare her little girl for her transition. Natalie, if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, hi everybody. So yeah, my name is Natalie Science, and I live in Chester County, and I have 3 kids in school age right now. And this one is my daughter. She's my first daughter. Right now she's 15 years old. So I'm actually transitioning into high school. So when I look back at this, it's just my heart just fills with emotion, because I did this when she was transitioning from preschool into kindergarten. And for me, it was important for anybody that would be in contact with my daughter to get to know her, because sometimes we take for granted things that we know that people will not know about our kids. And let me see if I can share it. All right, let's see.
Jackie, you might need to, oh, okay, there, oh, there we go. You are
Does
able
does
to do
it
it.
it works? Does it work?
Yes,
Yes.
yes, it
Okay.
did.
Okay, so I created and again this is up to the caregiver, the parents, whether you want to do a one pager, whether you want to do a two little pager, whether you want to do a little video, just because this was a long time ago. So this is what I had accessible with me, a computer and graphic design. So this is what I created. I created a little booklet for the teachers. She did go from preschool. She was in the IU building, and she was also part of a private preschool. She went to actually to a Jewish school, preschool, and then from the Jewish preschool, we went into the kindergarten, was Catholic school. And then my daughter did repeat kindergarten. So then we moved to the public school. So we recreated this for the public school, but this one was for when she transitioned into kindergarten. And she was dual enrolled, and so she did have an IEP. So I wanted to make sure that teachers and the therapists that were going to be in the school knew who my daughter was. And some people knew about her diagnosis. Some people didn't know about her diagnosis. So she has Down syndrome. I explained what Down syndrome was, and I wrote it down coming from her so that it would be more personable. I talked about how she is the same as my other two kids. I wrote about her strengths and her weaknesses. And I just wanted them to get to know her as the little girl and not just on the IEP paper, so that they would, get to know her better. This is my daughter Mia. These are my other two little kiddos. And yes, they all look alike. They're from the same mommy and daddy. So they're the siblings. And this is where I wrote what her strengths, where her auditory memory, so they could, I guess, personalize her educational plan based on her strengths. And let's see what else I added. Her needs. So her needs at that time were OT. So she needed a little bit more focus on her writing and her grasp movement. Occupational therapy that she was receiving. She was receiving also speech therapy and PT. So I try to give a little bit of a general overview of what she was like at that time, and what she liked and what she didn't like. And this booklet, I bound it like a little book, with a spiral binder, and I gave a copy to each teacher, and they were actually, they kept that throughout the years of her school too. And I thought it was very helpful, and they thought it was very helpful. And yeah, I guess that's about it. Don't know what else I have to if there's any questions, I'm more than glad to answer at the end.
Mia was a very busy young lady back then.
Mia was a very busy back lady. Yes, she was in hippotherapy and horseback riding. She was already in singing lessons, and yeah, she had a very busy life. She continues having a very busy life.
I was gonna say she always seems busy when I see the pictures and stuff of her, so I don't think that's changed so much.
No, she exactly, and that's her. Yeah, there you go.
Thanks, Natalie.
Yep.
I just wanted to say that is what worked for Natalie and her family to share, but you can definitely do, I've seen people do just like a one pager that talks about like likes and dislikes, and maybe like, I know my child learns best this way. Anything that works for you. The idea is just to help people get to know your child.
Yeah, I know when
So.
my son started in school too, he also had an IEP. We did a vision statement, and I would put a picture of my son David on there on the paper, and then I would kind of write, and my first line always was like, David will be a tax-paying citizen. And then I just kind of, talked about who he was, what his strengths were, and things like that. So, yeah, you individualize it for whatever you're comfortable doing as well. And then as he got older into high school, he did his own PowerPoint. But, that's the idea, what is your vision for your children as they go into school? So it's always a nice way.
Okay. What? Whoa. Hold on. There we go. So now we're going to talk about when you're transitioning, supporting inclusion and why that is so important, especially, when transitioning into kindergarten. Inclusion means that a person with a disability has the same rights, access, and choices as everybody else in the community. And it's now pretty well known as a universal human right. If you've ever been to any inclusion trainings or anything before, you've probably seen this, but this is basically an illustration of the model of inclusion. So if you consider that the blue dots are all of us, and any other color is different, I think this shows it pretty well. Exclusion, or like all the blue dots are included and everybody else is not. Segregations, like everybody's in the classroom together except this specific type of students is in this room over here away from everybody, so they're segregated. And then this one, integration, I mean, they're in the physical environment with the other students and people, but they're not really but they're not really interacting. They're just kind of there alongside them, maybe not interacting, not working on the same things. But when you get to inclusion, you see everybody's in the same space and they're all interacting and working together, and everybody's actively part of it, and it's great. So
and I think I was just going to add too, Jackie, if it's okay, that we want to make sure that all students feel welcome, and that's what inclusion is about, making sure that everyone is welcomed. We live in a very diverse world, and so when you're out in the community, out in wherever you are, it's very diverse, and feeling welcomed is really important. So
feeling like they belong. Yep.
Yeah.
And it's, to consider when we get into our communities as adults, we don't have, separate stores and separate spaces and all of those things. Everybody's together. So the rationale for inclusive education is least restrictive environment. That's what the law calls for. Schools should mirror our communities, and inclusive education, it's not just good for students with disabilities, it's good for everyone. It benefits all students. IDEA supports inclusion. It doesn't specifically mention the word inclusion, but if you understand what least restrictive environment is, or LRE, that's what you'll hear it called a lot. It means to the maximum extent appropriate. School districts must educate students with disabilities in the regular classroom with appropriate aids and supports. So what that means is every IEP team should first ask the question, how can this student's special education supports and services be provided in the gen ed classroom, in the gen ed environment? It's not a place, it's not a prepackaged program, it's a service. Children don't get sent to special education. It's a service they are provided. And that's, according to the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. So
Jackie, if you could just go back to the last slide.
sure.
I just want to make a point about
if I can get back there,
yeah, not forward, backward. I just wanted to talk about IDEA, that Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and that is the federal special education law. And it does support, there is language that supports a strong preference for inclusive education. And although the actual word inclusion does not appear in the law, the key principle and provision is that free, appropriate public education in the least restrictive environment. So I did put a link in the chat as well for what's called the LRE, the least restrictive environment. And there's a BEC in Pennsylvania, a basic education circular, and that will give you the specifics about LRE and what is exactly in the law. So I did put that link in the chat for everyone.
Thanks, Diane. She's the resource lady. So how do you make this idea of inclusion happen? One of the biggest ways is with SMART goals. SMART goals are specific, measurable, attainable, results-oriented, and time-bound. And so what that means is, when considering them being specific, the goal is specific in naming the skill or the subject area and the targeted result. Measurable, the goal is stated in a way that your child's progress can be measured. Attainable, the goal represents progress that's realistic. Results oriented, the goal clearly lays out what your child will do to accomplish it. And time bound, the goal includes performance criteria. Did you have anything you wanted to add to that, Diane?
Yeah, I was just going to say that when you're looking at the goals, when you're writing the goals in that IEP, because it is different when you're making that transition to a school age IEP. It is very different than that preschool IEP, and goals might be written slightly different. So and you have to also, and you might have heard some of this in the preschool era, so to speak, is that you need to have a baseline, and looking at that baseline data is really important, because then that's where they're going to be building, and that's where all this, the studying the SMART, how are you going to measure that, and then look at the progress monitoring of that, which is what you'll be receiving as they work on these goals. So and that's goals are they're, in fact, what I think I might do is just find another, and I'm going to get another handout. I'm going to find, there's a how to write measurable goals that patent, the Pennsylvania Assistive Training and Technical Assistance Network has on their website. I'm going to find that for everyone. I'm going to put that in the chat as well. That's a nice guide for you as far as writing measurable goals too.
Yeah, I know one time for my kiddos IEP, something that they wanted to measure, they wanted 100% accuracy all the time. And I was like, I don't even do that 100% of the time. So, supplementary aids and supports in least restrictive environment. Basically, what this slide is saying is that you want to start with 100% of the time people being included with their non-disabled peers. That's where we should be starting. It should be starting there and going to most restrictive, not the other way around.
Yeah, and I'll just add that, looking at the least restrictive environment, what can you do in that general education classroom? That is the law. That's where you need to start. My child starts in general ed with those supports and services, and what are they? And what can help that child to be successful in that environment? So it's really important to also note that, and we can, I don't think I'm jumping ahead, but in the on the IEP, you actually have to have that conversation about placement, like what supplementary aids and services were considered, what weren't considered. And it's a conversation to have to make sure that, you're talking about those supplementary aids and services. So in the general education curriculum.
And a lot of supports and services are portable too. Like they can be brought to the student. The student doesn't necessarily have to go to them. Making inclusion happen. You know, one way you can kind of assist the IEP team, the school, in making inclusion happen is by offering some strategies about how your child will be supported by the adults that they interact with and their peers that they're with every single day. That you're specific about how your child will communicate their needs effectively. Offering strategies about how your child will successfully interact with others, and, you know, provide them concrete steps toward how your child will be included in the routines and activities with their typical peers. This slide is about the framework for access and belonging. It's called the FAB. Diane mentioned Patton before, but this is a great resource put out by Patton. And I will share this in the follow-up email, and I think it's on the last slide that we have too. But it says, by using supplementary aids and services, the intended outcome of using the FAB is to have an implementation plan that expands participation and learning for a student with a disability. I'll share this slideshow too, and you guys can always click on the links to learn more about the FAB. And this is a big one. Family involvement matters. Research shows that all children, not just children with disabilities, all children do better when families are involved in their education, including children with disabilities. So families are a big part of it. Parents are a big part of it. Families lead the way. Family is the constant in the child's life. You'll have turnover, you'll have service systems change, personnel change, but families are always there. Families act today to prepare for the future, and families should be equal partners in relationships with educators. And I think it's important to note that IDEA and a lot of the laws we have on the books are because of parents advocating for their child to be included.
Yeah, I was just going to add too, I ended up putting a couple more links in the chat. I just wanted to let everybody know. I did put the annotated IEP as well,
Good.
as a one of your links that you can go to, because there's lots of information within that IEP, and especially since it's going to be a new document, you know, you're transitioning to school age, and you're going to want to know all the various sections that are in there, and you know how you can participate, how you can get your voice in there as a family member. And then I also put the link in for that framework for access and belonging, because that's a really important tool to use, especially when teams are struggling with maybe how can we best support this child in the general education curriculum. You know, oh, well, we tried this, we tried that. Well, this framework for access and belonging really takes the whole team through a process and really kind of dissects how can they really better support. Have they really tried this? Have they tried that? And it's facilitated by people who have been trained in that document, in that process. So you actually have an outside facilitator that comes in and does that with the whole IEP team. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew I put those links in there. And we will get to your question, Iona, as well when we get done. We're almost done.
Yeah,
We'll
we're almost done.
Open up for questions in a minute.
This is just some additional resources. Kindergarten, Here I Come. These are actually all really great resources. I've seen all of these. So if you're looking for some more resources about transitioning to kindergarten, these are some good ones. This is Transition Process, another Patan publication, and the FAB that Diane was just talking about that I think she said she put in the chat. Also, if you would ever need any of these in like a hard copy or something, just reach out to us and I can get them for you. If you have any questions, if you need any help with this, you can always reach out to the Peel Center. You can call us. You can click on our Need to Talk link at the top of our website, or you can email info@peelcenter.org, and we'll get you to one of our family resource specialists like Diane, who can help walk you through this. They're great. And then real quickly before I open it up for questions, if you guys could take a couple minutes and do our survey, you can scan the QR code or click on the link. That would be great. That helps our funders fund more trainings like this and inform the kind of trainings that we offer. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and say, feel free to ask questions. And
Yeah.
Diane?
Yeah, I was going to say, Anya put the link in the chat as well for the evaluation. And I just want to also add about the evaluation. It's really important for us for that feedback so that we can, bring to you something better. So please let us know if everything was clear or not, or any other suggestions you might have. And don't forget that this is a series. And so in 2 weeks, we'll be back doing student-led IEPs. Which I think I might be leading that and hopefully have a partner helping me with that one as well. And I also think it might be good to, since we are going to open up for questions, we might want to stop the recording